Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Nobot Studios. Welcome to another Grit Fantasy RPG video. For today's topic, I'll be talking about lineages. Now, lineages are one of the most important features of characters in Grit Fantasy RPG. It's sort of the base from which everything else is built. So, obviously, they are the first thing that you choose when you're making a character. Each lineage has 4 narrative tags associated with it, a special ability that's unique to that lineage, and just a brief description. So this kind of gives you a nice flavor to start with when you're building your characters in the first step. So I thought it would be nice to go through and do a video here specifically for lineages. I know I've covered them before, but I just kind of wanted to get into some detail, cover each one, talk about their, narrative tags, description, and maybe some like design notes and little side notes for you just to have a little extra to think about. Okay. One thing that I did, which is going to be kind of fun here, I'm going to present these in a order of popularity. So I have gone through all the little names in the back of the book of the characters that were used to playtest the game, and also some of my own notes and thoughts. And I compiled kind of a tallied list of how many of each lineage was actually played during the development of Grit. If nothing else, just out of curiosity for myself. And then I just thought it would be fun to kind of introduce them in this way. This is not about, some lineages being better than others. This is not a review of them like that. I'm kind of just going through and talking about each one. So the order doesn't matter as far as how good or bad they are, because that's not what I'm talking about here. This is just popularity of, what players chose. And also keep in mind, some were pre-gens that I just handed out, and others were quick build characters that were just simply rolled. So there's some of those in there. For the most part, it was a pretty obvious spread of numbers of characters. So, there could be plus or minus here and there or whatever, but this is just a general kind of order of popularity. So anyway, without further ado, I will get started here, and there's going to be 12 of these. So we will start with number 12, the bottom of the barrel, and that is Quickling. Now this comes as a bit of surprise because Quicklings are kind of a unique one that I added. When I was, long ago putting this game together, it only started with 5 lineages, and they were the standard fare. It was like, human, dwarf, elf, halfling, and giant. I know giant's not really standard fare, but that's kind of what I started with Grit. And then I just later added 12, or, total of 12, added 6 or 7. And I by doing that, I wanted to include the standard stuff because it is fantasy, and I think people, expect to kind of see that. But I wanted to put in some other stuff that were, a little less common. And Quickling was one of them. Poor old Quickling comes in number 12. They are these compact, swift, keen, and nimble creatures. They are fey-like, They have this glimmering blue skin that, moonlight and sunlight, when it hits it kind of shimmers. And no, they're not vampires. I picture them as being very short and very thin, but very muscular. So their ability really, is to, they can take an extra action. You just like burn a focus die and they could take an extra action or reaction. So I'm surprised this wasn't taken more often, this lineage, because this ability is actually pretty cool. So yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it's the long ears. Who knows? Buggy eyes. Who knows? But anyway, Quickling is number 12. Number 11, the elf. Well, elves are the standard fare, right? We've seen them over and over again in all kinds of games, movies, and stuff. I think they're up against some things there. They are kind of overdone. They also kind of have the appearance of being maybe arrogant a lot of times in games, or in movies and stuff. That's not what I wanted to project in Grit Fantasy RPG. Of course, I want to leave things a little bit more open for people to interpret things the way they want to. But I see elves as like graceful, charismatic, kind of worldly because they have long lives, and wise. They've been around a long time. And it's because of that they have this mystical aura ability, which allows them to, when they're using a command or doing a command roll, they can use any number of focus dice for that. For anyone who wants to play a wizardly character or a bard-like character or somebody who just like talks their way out of everything, an elf is a perfect choice. Because any kind of arcane artifact that is elemental based, like a wand or staff, or even bard-like items, not really weapons, but items, require command. Also, magic shards and gems and things like that, amulets, they also take command often. So an elf can be a powerhouse with these items. And if you can find some kind of way to gain back some focus dice, there are some, single-use items that do that. You can have a pretty tough wizardly type elf running amok. So just to keep that in mind. I see them as maybe a bit taller than most, books or movies or whatever. Taller than humans, but very slender, kind of tree-like. They have ears that kind of go out to the side instead of up, and they're quite large. And of course, they wear, natural flowing garments and of, the color of their area that they live in. And I picture them living everywhere, like desert, near the ocean, forest, meadows, all kinds of stuff. So that's just how I see them. And again, this was a standard race, race at the time. Now it's Lineage, that just had to be included in fantasy. So moving on, number 10. It is the giant. Now, this is a bit surprising because, giant isn't really the standard fare. I guess in some games you do have the option. But yeah, these guys are just brutes. They're just massive, rugged. They just break stuff and do damage and cause havoc that way. They're super strong. So their ability is very much like the elf. They can take any number of focus dice and dump it into a single might roll. So what happens a lot of times with giants is they end up being the boss killer because they will, kind of hold on to those focus dice, the player, and use them in the last clutch moment in battle. There has been a lot, or not a lot, but a number of nice characters, memorable characters in the time that I run Grit. So it was kind of a surprise to see, giants kind of lower ranked here. So anyway, yeah, I do see them kind of living in the highlands and mountains. I think probably most people do. They're kind of, stone-like features, They may also find themselves in more civilized areas, maybe working as mercenaries or soldiers or guards or some kind of paid muscle because they're just huge. And that's the giant. Number 9, the stoutling. Now, stoutlings are they're halflings, or what are they called? Kenders and Dragonlance. I know Kenders are more gnome-like, possibly. But they're just these little fellas that peaceful, kindly. They exude goodwill, right? They're just small, unassuming, they're determined, and they're true. Right? Their ability allows them to add any number of dice to a prowess roll, focus dice. So they make excellent archers. They could do that potent power kill at the end. They can also dodge really well, so they can survive some stuff. And again, with all these lineages that have this kind of ability, you don't need to really put a lot. You don't have to put a lot of points in those stats, right? The aspects. So even though this runs on their ability runs on a prowess, doesn't mean you have to stack prowess. They can be maybe a little more clumsy for a stoutling, but just still ridiculously good at firing bows and stuff. So you don't have to build them as prowess-based characters, right? I picture them as being, maybe a little paunchy. They are short and stout, but they are surprisingly dexterous. Okay, moving on. We're going to go to number 8. That is the dwarf. Not surprising that, I'm seeing all the standard stuff, standard lineages, kind of at the bottom half, right? Dwarves are stocky, stubborn, resilient, and brave. What they do is they do armor well. So they can wear armor if they wear armor with a prowess penalty, it's 1 less for them. So they can just wear light armor without any penalty at all. And if you get into some nicer artifact armor that has lower prowess penalty, they can rack up some good soak with very little effect on their prowess. They are also very good at, kind of going against poisons and fear and stuff like that because their static valor rolls are always easy. Okay, so I think, people mostly picture dwarves as these short, stocky, bearded, tough guys, right? You can certainly play them that way. I think a question came up like, do female dwarves have beards? And my answer is maybe some of them do, and maybe some of them don't. And maybe some male dwarves don't have beards. Like, why can't there be dwarves without beards? That's all I'm saying. Maybe they just have a goatee or just a mustache. Let's be brave out there and do something different. They are definitely tied to their armor. I see them. And they, probably live in areas that there's smithing and mining and stuff like that. They prefer underground strongholds more than likely, hills, mountains, that kind of stuff. But all in all, I kind of picture them probably like most people do from most games. So anyway, that is number 8. Moving on to number 7. That is the gnome. The gnome is, I have to admit, one of my favorite lineages. They are inventive, perceptive, crafty, and alert. And if you look at the picture here, this young gnomeling is wearing Noggle goggles. So each gnome, their ability actually is to have a signature gadget, So each gnome has a signature gadget. You basically start with an extra gear item that you roll on, and that is on the Gadgets and Gizmos loot table. So you could have one of 20 items from that list as a starting item in addition to the unique item that you get. So they start with a little advantage there. And there's some really cool stuff in the list. So I'm kind of a little surprised it's a little lower on the popularity, but maybe not, because they are kind of more standard. Like, there are gnomes in 5e and D&D and stuff. So not surprising. But anyway, I picture them as, they're shorter, not super muscular, prominent noses, thick eyebrows, and gem-like eyes. They wear bright clothing, like striped and polka dots and all kinds of complex patches and patterns. And of course, they probably live in woodland areas. This is one that, when I was designing it, went through a whole ton of iterations. There were all kinds of different things I was playing with when I designed the gnome, and eventually came to the signature gadget as the ability, which I'm very happy with. It rounded out the character and makes them feel unique, and it makes them feel like they're artifactors, right? They're into gadgets and stuff, so it's kind of cool. So anyway, that is the bottom half. Let's go into 6. One of my personal favorites, we have the Froom. These are basically just giant walking mushrooms, because why not? I have to be honest, I love drawing Froom. They're one of my favorite things to illustrate. Maybe I should do just a book on Frooms. The big book of Frooms. Can you imagine that? Anyway, they're mystical, peculiar, spongy, and eccentric. Like, I picture these as being maybe a little bit high on their own hallucinogens or something. But anyway, just odd. They're kind of maybe awoken into some kind of strange consciousness. They have this gem-like eyes. And I've seen all manner of Froom being played in the games, and people just seem to really gravitate towards them. They have a special ability which basically allows them a spore plume. So they can, as an action, sacrifice a focus die, and then in melee range, this cloud poofs out. And anyone within that range has to make a valor roll, or they just run for it. So it's a good kind of defensive thing that they can do. And it's not always used, but it can be very clutch in certain situations. So I just love these guys. They're very eccentric. And I think they were one of the first ones that I added when I was designing the extra lineages to make 12. Okay, so I've seen them played in sizes that are super tiny, like 2 feet tall, and then some that are just giant. So it's fun to see the variations on how these are played out. And with that ability, you can pretty much play any kind of type if you're going for a type. It just fits well with everything. So, all right, number 5. Which one will it be, huh? It is the Wildern. Now, I know Ryan, my buddy, would say it's a Wildern. Totally wrong. Don't believe him. It's a Wildern. Okay. Yes. Again, another favorite. There's a couple different ways to look at these guys. One, you can picture them as like a humanoid body, like a human-sized body with an animal head. I don't see them that way. I see them more like this fella here. Looks like a little raccoon, right? It's like a raccoon that has normal hands and wears clothes. So they're the size of a raccoon, but they just can be, humanoid, basically. So they're not human size with a raccoon head. It's like raccoon body, raccoon, face and all that, but they can manipulate objects and stuff like that. They're like humanoids, but just animals. Okay, their tags are hardy, intuitive, clever, and vigilant. They have one of the coolest abilities in the game, I think, and the most simple, and that is natural reflexes. So they add +2 to all focus die rolls that they make. So super simple. It works for everything. You can make any class type character out of this. I think they naturally would fit into like a ranger type role, but they could be playing to anything, really, any way you'd like. Their size and appearance vary depending on which animal they resemble, and I've seen all manner of animals selected for this. Boars, like a buffalo, cats, raccoons, rabbits, all kinds of stuff. So it's a really fun one. People have like a lot of, fun time like coming up with ideas for them, and I think kids love them too. And so it's no surprise that they're in the top half of the popular vote here, or popular choice. Okay, number 4, we're getting close. Number 4, what will it be? It will be Bullig. Bulligs are basically like giant toads or frogs that just happen to be running around. Now, I know you could say this could be a wildern, but I think wilderns I look at more of like furry creatures, like mammals and not amphibians. So a Bullig is amphibious, dexterous, quirky, and steadfast. So their ability is basically they're like frogs. So they can jump as a short move, cling to vertical surfaces, and swim without making a roll. This makes for a perfect like thief type character or rogue like character, or even a scout. So really, really fun to play. One of their drawbacks is they can't wear armor with a prowess penalty. However, there are artifacts and stuff that will help with that, like higher powered armor that doesn't have a prowess penalty, that kind of stuff. And there is an item in the unique item list, I think, that has that too. So there's ways around it. Okay, so they're slender limbed. They have kind of thin arms, bulbous eyes, lengthy fingers, and long, thin mouths. They have a bunch of different skin tones and patterns. I picture that being more geographic. They probably live in, mud huts and stuff by ponds and in woodland areas. Perhaps even living in the trees. I did run a game with a Bullig NPC who lived in a treehouse, so that was fun. And had quite a number of memorable characters played that were Bulligs. So a definite solid choice, and I agree with the number 4 popularity on that. All right, top 3. Number 3 is Hoblin. Not surprising. Hoblin people seem to gravitate towards them. They're not exactly goblins, but I think people mistake them that way. And I even put in writing about that they hate being confused with goblins, even though they share a similar propensity for mischief. So these little guys are lively, mischievous, sly, and resourceful. Their ability is sneaky save. So basically, if they roll a 1, whenever they make an aspect roll, they can re-roll it and keep the result. So critical rolls with them, probably not going to happen as much. So it's kind of cool. They're kind of roundish, right? Stubby, long, gangly arms and legs. They have bright skin tones, pointy ears, expressive features. They're just amusing and comical. and I think that's why people like them. I think people in general just like goblins, even though they're kind of portrayed as the bad guys, and now they're the good guys in D&D, whatever. But yeah, I think people just like goblins in general, so Hoblin's just a natural choice, and 3 in the popular vote, definitely, or not vote, I should say, 3 in the popular choice makes sense to me. So, all right, coming down the wire here, number 2, Ruck War. Ruck War are basically kind of these earthen, stony, mystical creatures. They're these giant, heavy, durable, powerful fellas or gals that they move slowly, but they're just like these kind of peaceful, lumbering giants, right? Like the rock muncher in Neverending Story. They're absolutely made of stone, so they get a natural soak of 2. That's kind of their ability. And their brawling attacks deal full melee damage. The only drawback is they can't wear armor because they're just like these huge rocky things. But there is a Ruck War helmet that is made specifically for a Ruck War that give them soak. That is an uncommon item in the loot tables. So, the thing that gets me with these is the small twinkling eyes. Like, I picture them as being, they're most certainly magical, You have these rumbling voices. I've just seen people just love these as a lineage. They're entertaining. They're not like anything else really in other games. And I think people just gravitate towards them. And I deliberately made their background and all the backgrounds for the Lineages kind of a little more obscure. But for Ruck Wars, I wanted them to be, particularly mysterious. Like, are they just animations, or like, are they actually creatures that just like everyone else, or are they some kind of magical entity? Like, who knows what they are? I kind of like it, leaving it mysterious. I had actually thought maybe they hatch from eggs from some other kind of creature. Who knows? But be fun to play around with that in any kind of background for a campaign. But a definite solid choice, and I think definitely popular. And last but not least, number 1 is the human. Now, when when I first tallied it up, I was like, oh man, like, I'm not a fan of humans in most RPG games. I'm kind of bored with that, because like I play one every day in real life. However, it was like hands down way more than the others. Like, there were so many more people played humans than anyone else. So there's just no way that it was even close from number 1 spot to number 2 spot. There could be reasons for this. Like I said before, it could be because I did random rolls, I did pre-gens, but I think part of it has to do with their ability, which is rigorous training. So I picture them as being, they're focused, they're tough, they're willful and direct, and they've gone through this rigorous training, and their focus die pool is D6, D8, and D10 instead of D4, D6, and D8. So just that little boost, I think, pushes people over the edge to pick the human. Not that it's a huge, advantage, but it just feels like it is, Yeah, maybe because it's just familiar, and people like to go with what's familiar. I think humans also can have a lot of variation as well. I know I have played a couple that I really enjoyed playing, and they were completely different. So you could run them like a short squat little dwarf-like human or tall, slender, graceful. The sky's the limit, really. All different, backgrounds and geographic locations that that come from. I picture them being like everywhere. And basically, I left it pretty general. Like humans are average size, present a wide range of features, skin tones, and eye colors. They are hardy and adaptive, can be found nearly anywhere. So I think that just appeals. And, it's nothing, humans are nothing to shake a stick at. They're tough. So I could see why they would be chosen, especially if you're someone like kind of really into the combat end of things. Of course, you could go totally command based with human and or insight based with a human as well. But from what I have seen, they're mostly like warrior types. So anyway, that is the first choice in popularity, human. And that kind of concludes kind of running over the lineages. I just thought it'd be fun to go through this like this, and I had a fun time kind of looking at the popularity of the lineages and kind of pondering that. And as I move on with other books and settings, I will be looking at that as well. Of course, with galaxies coming up, there will not be humans. But a whole host of crazy lineages that no one's heard of. So it will be interesting to see how popularity works with those. So anyway, I want to thank you for joining me in this, and I hope it was at least entertaining, if not somewhat informative. And hope you guys are all out there enjoying yourselves and happy and healthy. And once again, keep rolling those dice.